One of the most discussed advanced topic on squat is shoe choice. There's generally two schools of thought on shoes and two kinds of shoes that people tend to use. One would be with a heel and one would be flat. There's rules of thumb that apply to the other advanced videos, both bar position and stance width, that also have analogies to the type of shoe you use. So in general, a higher bar and a narrower stance will likely be more benefited from a heeled shoe. The reason for that is the same reasons discussed in the other videos. That type of squat, where you have a high bar and a narrow stance, is going to require more knee travel, more knee flexion, and the heel on the squat is going to elevate your squat or elevate your heel and give you a little bit more mobility in your ankle, which could be required as those knees travel forward far and you come into a deep squat. Generally, a wider stance, low bar squat is going to be more benefited by a flat shoe. Now, if you have a flat shoe, you don't want it to be an elevated flat shoe, meaning you don't want a big thick sole on this. You want the sole to be as thin as possible. You want to be on the ground as close as possible. There's generally more choices today than there used to be for high quality flat shoes. Wrestling shoes are okay. The drawback of wrestling shoes is there's usually not a lot of rigidity to them. So, wrestling shoes are designed to allow you to move your foot, to move your ankle, which you don't really want in the squat. So something like this with leather is good because it adds more rigidity and it's totally flat. The advantage of heeled shoes is that generally they are much higher quality. So they're more expensive, but they're very high quality. I like them because it feels like you're almost on a magnet to the ground. You feel very secure, very solid in your connection to the ground. They're usually very well built shoes. Regardless of the shoe choice, one of the big things is that you want the bottom to have a nice grip on various different surfaces. So if you're on a competition and they have carpet, or you're in a gym with rubber matting, or you're on a platform with wood, you want to make sure that the bottom of those sticks nicely and has good grip to all of those surfaces. If you do go with heeled shoes and you're a power lifter, I do prefer the heel to be as small as possible. There are some very Olympic lifting centered shoes out there with a giant heel on them, which I don't think are great for powerlifters because that kind of range of motion is generally not required. Even if you fall into the category of a wide stance, low bar squat, that doesn't mean that heeled shoes are not the answer for you. Sometimes people have difficulty achieving depth because of their ankle dorsiflexion, which means if you think about bringing the toe up, that's dorsiflexion. Some people are very limited in that, and that can stop them from getting depth. What a heeled shoe does is gives you a little bit more range of motion in the ankle. So instead of your foot being flat like this, it's tilted down, which means your knees can travel forward more before your ankle mobility becomes a restriction on continuing to go down. Another thing is if you hit the bottom of your squat and you use flat shoes and you watch on video and your heels get light on the ground, some people you can even see daylight come up on their heels. If that happens to you, you're being restricted by your ankle mobility, by your dorsiflexion, and heeled shoes can be a good answer for you then, because if your heels are coming up off the ground in the bottom of the squat, you need to translate that weight back from the front of your foot to the rear of your foot before you can actually apply force into the bar. So a heeled shoe may allow you to keep more weight on your heel for the entire squat. One of the most common flat shoes I see are Chuck Taylors. I'm actually personally not a favorite of those at all because they're elevated off the ground, and I've actually cut into them and dug them out before, and they truly don't have a flat sole. There is a little bit of a taper with a higher heel and lower front, but for all intents and purposes, they can be considered a flat shoe. But they do have cushion, which is not good for any kind of shoe, period, for squatting. You don't want any cushion. You don't want basketball shoes. You don't want running shoes. You want something with a very hard, firm sole. Chuck Taylors don't have a very hard, firm sole. And the other thing, the canvas sides and how they connect to the bottom, I've seen them blow out before, and that's not something you want. Again, if a shoe blows out and it's on an elevated surface, you can roll much easier than if it's a flat shoe to the ground. So I would prefer wrestling shoes over Chuck Taylors for a flat shoe, but there's a lot more shoes coming out these days that are designed for powerlifters with no heel on them.